Greetings from Gay Pogue in Arlington, Texas. Today we're going to create a tile based on Delftware, the lovely blue and white china that's been made in the Netherlands for a long time. If you want to see the supplies I use today, look in the description below. I have provided some links so that you can buy them for yourself if you so desire, but feel free to use whatever supplies you have on hand. With that, let's get tangling. We start our string on our Zendala tile by drawing a series of circles. Turning the tile as you go, we can draw our first circle about that far in from the edge. And just carefully try to keep that same distance away from the edge. If it varies a bit, don't worry. Tangling is an art form that creates its perfection with imperfections. If everything was perfect, we would just think it was done on a computer. The second circle we're going to draw is in from this one, about an inch, about that distance from the first one. So let's draw that. Now I want us to make a series of dots on these circles as guides. We're going to put 12 things around this circle, so let's divide it in half like so. Turn it a quarter of way around and divide it in half again. And over here we want to make 12, so we're going to put 2 in each of these spots. So we kind of just eyeball it that way. And this way. Well, I think I'm going to move this over here. Because this is Zentangle inspired art, I make myself free to erase a little if I need to. And if there's something that doesn't look as even as you'd like, go ahead and adjust it now. It's still freehand. Now the next dots we want to put down are going to be on this circle, halfway between each of these. So let's look at that, like that. These will, of course, be closer together. This is the string now on which the rest of the tile is based. This part here we're going to draw first. It's the Tangle Abeko, A-B-E-K-O, deconstructed by Lynn Mead. We make our little loops here, and then we draw the flowers on. I'm going to draw some of these in pencil. Watch for a minute, and then maybe you want to try some in pencil yourself before you get out your pen. We're going to draw an S. Go up a little bit, and then over and end right there, like that. Or you can start at the top, start here, and go backwards. Sometimes it's fun to do that, and end there. Go there, an S, come around like that. S, come around like that. Now let's complete these. We want a small loop at the bottom, or toward the middle, and a larger loop toward the outside, like that. Small loop, larger loop, small loop, larger loop. And you can see it's a series of S's and backwards S's. Small loop, larger loop. I'm going to continue now with my Micron PN that's in dark blue. In fact, on this tile, I use only this pen. I just press harder if I want the line wider, or lighter press hard if I want the line darker, or put less pressure if I want it lighter. So let me start again here, kind of as I did before. We're going to do an S like that, an S like this. And then continue on around until you've completed the circle. We want these elements to be larger than these. So we chop a little bit closer to the edge there and then hit it so we've got that at the end. The next thing we do is add the petals to these pieces here to make it look like a flower. So we start kind of right there and add a petal. Start about halfway between there, make a petal, and down here again halfway. And we go over here. Halfway down, halfway down. We add a little ball right here. And those are our little flowers. Each one will look a little different. But if you've done much gardening, you'll know that each flower itself is different from the others if you look at it minutely. Picking up your pencil now, I want us to put some dots between these 2 points. Right there. More or less between those 2 points. Now we're going to draw an arch from this point to the edge and back down, like that. From this point to the edge and back down. You can do it in pencil first if you feel like it, but I'm just going to go for it. I find that if I do arches, if I draw arches in the way that my arm naturally wants to, I have much better luck than if I tried to draw it this way, pulling it toward me. So pick it here. Just try to draw a natural arch like that. Pretty easy peasy. Might want to draw it in the air first before you actually put it on paper. Okay, now we have that. Now I want us to aura this line on the inside. So let's start down here. And draw that aura, trying to maintain that equal distance between these two lines. Let's fill in this central piece of the flower here. We're going to go back and use our S's. We're going to start up here at the top and kind of make an S like that. And then we're going to make a little line like that. And then very lightly with our pen, let's draw those little lines, aura-ing that top curve there. Here we've got a bigger flower, so we'll just do that. and that, and then now we'll aura our way down the flower. And it'll look like the center of a little bud. To get those thin lines, remember not to press as hard. Just kind of tickle the paper. Let's take our graphite pencil and draw a few more circles to use as guides for what we do next. So let's draw a circle, more or less like that. Then let's have another circle kind of coming behind. They don't have to be perfect. Come on over here. Now it looks like Mickey Mouse ears. But let's, and then maybe another one like that coming out. And if you want to sculpt those circles a little bit, feel free. It's going to help us with the placement of the flowers we're going to draw. This tangle is called Jara, J-A-R-A, and it was originated by Patricia Aragon. So we're going to work on this part right now. Let's go ahead and let's go back and take our pencil, I should say, and put a dot in the middle of the circle, wherever that might be. Some of these you'll kind of have to guess on. And now let's divide this space into 5 sections. So we just draw a little bit out like that. Make this about, I don't know, 75 or 80 degrees, but not 90 degrees. And then let's consider that kind of space all the way around, and we'll get 5 reasonably even sections. Doesn't have to be perfect, of course. And do the same thing on the other ones. Okay. Taking our pen, we're going to draw these petals. We'll start at the middle, come out to the edge, and put a little dip in the middle there, and come back down, and repeat. Finally, we want to draw the Tangle YNIX. It's from Zentangle HQ, and it's basically a leaf shape that you can play with. And we're going to play with it here. So I'm going to draw this leaf shape that's going to jut into this area. And then I'm going to come along and, perhaps working at a different angle, add another leaf shape here. And then another one here. And you can make them a little fatter, because we're going to put something inside of them. And try to vary them in the direction they point so that they look a little more natural. We're going to fill each one of these leaf shapes in a decorative way. Let's put a somewhat wavy line down the middle of each one, lengthwise. And then let's mimic somewhat this little bud here, the way these little lines go, but we're going to go ahead and just leave them straight. And we're going to come in at an angle and just lightly draw these parallel lines. I like to start at the bottom here and work up so that I am auraing the line above my pen, and I'm not covering it up with my pen as I go. And so we'll just do that. If you're using a pen and you want to get these fine lines, it may help if you hold your pen a little bit more upright. Now let's work on the distinguishing feature of the Tangle gyra. We come up here and we make an exaggerated dip in the top of the petal. Come from here, it's sort of a tethered aura. It doesn't have to mimic it exactly. In fact, you can kind of vary it a bit. And then here's where the PN comes in to be exceptionally helpful. That is shading this in here. We turn it kind of on its side and it'll fill an area quite quickly and nicely. And you do this to the top of all the petals. Now, once you've done all of that, I want us to make some very light marks to emphasize the veins that might be coming out from the center of these flowers. So we're going to very lightly with our pen, we're going to draw very lightly, barely touch the surface. Unfortunately, Sakura does not make an 01 or even an 02 or 03 or 04 in this color. I hope they do that in the future. There's just an 05, a 10, and the PN. So we're going to do the best we can on these fine lines with what we've got. It's probably not a bad idea to just learn how to do this. Then when you're on the go, you just have to worry about taking one pen with you. And it will answer all your needs. I like to add some little dots up here in that white portion above the marks. Just a few. Very lightly touching the pen to the surface. Now I'd like to work a little bit on line weight, especially on these loops that connect the flowers. You can see here I've emphasized the weight on one side, almost like we were using a calligraphy pen to draw those lines. So let's take our PN and begin. What we want to do is start here and come down and just emphasize that line, making it wider and then narrowing it into nothing, and then fill that in. I'm only going to do it on one side. We could probably do it on either side, but one side is what I've chosen to do. And I'm making this part of the pattern. There is no light source in most tangling. We just create a pattern that makes it seem as though light is coming from one direction or another. Sculpting these lines also gives us the opportunity to cover up things that we might not have liked as much as we would like to have. We're finished now with our Micron pen, and we're going to begin working with these pastel pencils. I think you could just as easily work with watercolor or even perhaps alcohol markers or water markers. Each will be a little bit different, but they'll ultimately render a very nice piece of art. I wanted to work with these pastels because they are easier to work into the paper and give a smooth look when you burnish them with a tortillion. We'll start in the center, and I'm going to use these two pencils. One is a little lighter blue and the other is a darker blue. You'll see the three that I chose. These are different, but they are really in the same tone range. This one, on the other hand, is a much brighter blue, almost a turquoise. And I'm going to use it for accent. Let me show you quickly. I've made a little color chart here. The pencils that I'm using are this one and this one. And then the one for accent is down here, and these are the numbers in this particular line of pencils. So I'm going to take these two pencils here, and I'm going to start, well, let me do it this way. I'm going to start with this lighter color, and I'm going to just color the inside kind of lightly with this pencil, and just maybe about half of it. Halfway up this way. Then I'm going to take the darker pencil and I'm going to color that center pretty heavily. Okay. When you're dealing with these colors and perhaps some flakes of the pigment come off the pencil and don't quite sink into the paper, don't wipe it with your hand. Wipe it, either blow it off, blow the extra pieces off, or use one of these brushes. They're really inexpensive. I think $4 or so. But if you rub it with your hand, it'll smudge it, and then every time you put your hand down, you'll leave some residue. So now I'm going to take my tortillion, and I'm going to kind of push this light blue out a little bit and fade it. I'm going to do that on all of them first, and then I'm going to pull from the middle out, that darker color. So okay, now I'm going to the middle and I'm going to spread it out some. But don't carry it all the way out here. Just spread it a little bit in the middle. You want to work it into the paper. Like that. Okay. Now while we're at it, let's go ahead and take our gold pencil, our gold Sakura GellyRoll, and be sure you get your ink flowing on it, nice and smooth. And we want to put dots in the middle like this. So put one in the middle and maybe 5 or 6 dots around it. I'll put one in the middle and then like that. So now take that kind of turquoisey pencil, or the one that's kind of outside from the others, and I want you to color, try to stay in the lines, the part of this leaf that has been hatched with those diagonal hatch marks. I'm working from the inside out so that I don't smear what I've done working on the other things. Okay, and we take our tortillion and work that color into there. Pick up that darkest pencil, and I want to try to lift these flowers up off the page somewhat. So we're going to go all around this outside with this dark pencil and work it into the paper, and it will actually make these flowers look like they're 3D. And don't be afraid of putting a lot of color on this. This is where, though, if you're using as colored pencils, you're going to have to adjust your colors and kind of burnish it out to the edge. You'll have to finagle with it. That's one reason I like the chalk, is because you can darken or lighten it with the tortillion. And you can always come back and put a second layer if you want to. Okay, I also want to lift these areas, so I'm going to use a piece of paper to cover up where my hand will be so that I don't smear what I've already colored. So wherever there's an overlap, you want to color that area to emphasize that overlap. And now we take our tortillion and kind of smooth that out. This is where you hold it out at arm's length and look at it and see if you feel like you want to pull this color out a little bit more. I think I do. And so I'm going to just go back and pull it out. I'm going to fill that space with a little more color. I can really see the grain of the paper here. Once you get your pattern drawn with all the pins, you feel like you're pretty well finished, but very often you're only half finished because the shading and the little embellishments and little fixes you add to things end up taking a lot of time. I think for now that's pretty well got it. The next step would be our flowers around here, the jarras. And for those, I'm going to actually use this turquoisey looking one in the center. These little bud looking things. Now take this lighter color and we want to color in the little leaves. By the way, these colored pencils can be bought individually from Blick Art Supply. You don't have to buy a huge box. You can buy just what you need, and they're under $2 a piece. That's one of the nice things dealing with Blick does for us, is you can buy individual pieces of, tubes of paint, markers, pencils. If you haven't ever shopped online at Blick, you may be surprised at some of the stuff you can get. And if you live somewhere where they have a Blick store, you're even luckier. Although sometimes you still have to order things online. Okay. Now I want to take my tortillion and kind of do what I did before. Just kind of smooth this out, all of it. I'm not going to be overly fussy about separating these colors. I just want to work the pigment into the paper. This is a really handy dandy little tool. It's my Mono Zero elastomer eraser. Tombow makes these, and you just push your eraser out like that. I use it as a highlighter. Instead of trying to get a white chalk pencil and color over that to kind of make a highlight in the center, what you can do is take this little eraser and you can just erase it in the middle, and that creates the highlight. So we remove the color instead of trying to color over it. I'm just trying to hit it right down the middle. To get that contrast, light and dark. Let's move now to our last bit of shading. We're going to shade these spaces in here. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to go around and just kind of outline with the darker blue all around it on the outside of that arch. And now I'm going to take the lighter piece, the lighter pencil, and just color lightly in there. And we'll let our tortillion do its magic. Take your trusty tortillion now, and let's blend these colors. Or I should say, just work the colors into the paper. As best you can. And kind of smudge the edges where the dark and the light meet. There we are. Nearly done. Let's take our gold pen, our gold metallic pen, get our ink flowing here. And add some more gold. I'm going to add one at the top here, one at where these intersect, and then here, here, and one more just out in space there. So here, here, be careful with this gold, it doesn't dry very fast. Now we come to something that is not really in the Zentangle canon, but I like to do this to my tiles because I love messing with gold. I add this little edging onto my tile, and I'm going to show you how I do it. So here we have the tile. It's very difficult to try to do this with a pen. You can, if you're real tedious, you could probably get some sort of a gold edge on it. But here's what I like to do. I use these pan watercolors. It's a water-based pigment, Gansai Tambi. You can get them on Amazon. Not terribly expensive. And they look like that. In order to make them usable, you have to add some water. Here I'm getting it. I keep it in a little jar on my desk. I take some water and I put a little bit, few drops into the color I'm going to use. Don't overdo it. You can always add more, but you can't take it out. Then take your brush and kind of mix this up. And if the pan is real dry, it may take a little more mixing than this is going to take, because I had it wet yesterday. And you want to stir it around in there and mix those gold micro flakes until this has about the consistency of heavy cream, heavy whipping cream. Okay, when you get that, see, it'll have a big glob on it, but it's going to stick and not drip off. Then you take this and don't completely wipe your brush off. And I'm just going to show this to you on a card. I take my brush and I kind of scrape that paint off like that. It's like you're just scraping it off with your brush. Well, actually scraping the brush off with the card. And then get down in here, wipe a little off, and then scrape that off. Now, to get it nice and even takes a little practice. But you want to put a goodly amount of paint on there. So roughly that's even a little wider border than I sometimes use, but you get maybe a 1/16 of an inch around the edges. Now, as I warned you earlier, this gold takes a while to dry. So when you're done, you might keep a jar nearby that you could lay this on so that all the edges can dry up off the table. Maybe it'll make more sense now. But I'm going to take this gold and I'm going to very carefully, I'll start here, start maybe with the top part of the pen and then work your way. I hope that makes sense to you. Now you want to try to keep this about the same width all the way around, but a few variations just means that it was hand done. Okay, now I want you to put this down like I told you on some sort of surface to keep it off of the table, and let's set it aside and let it dry and go have yourself a cup of tea, and we'll come back after this is fully dry and I'll show you what we do next. Now that this edge is all nice and dry, I want to draw a little border on it. Take your pen and just follow that little edge. There should be a little ridge at the edge. We want to set that off, and it will, from the rest of the things, and it will make it stand out even more, that contrast with the dark blue next to it. So let's go all around this. Don't try to go over that gold. It'll ruin your pen. Just right next to it. All done. So let's put our chop on it. And then turn it over and date it. And sign it. Thank you all for joining me, and I look forward to seeing your wonderful work out on the internet. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments section below, and I will get back with you as soon as I can. Happy tangling!